All right, hello everyone. This is Jonas from Gears for Breakfast, and we're doing developer commentary on DLC 1 for Hat in Time called Seal the Deal. So, this developer commentary, last time we did the main game. This time we're just going to be talking about the CLC and nothing else. So, even if we want to, we can't answer questions that are DLC related. We want to make sure that people who are interested in behind the scenes info on DLC 1 can get it here. That's what we're here for. So I am joined. So I'm Jonas, designer and producer at Gears for Breakfast, and with me I have Jenna, our 2D artist, 2D lead
Hello.
artist,
Hello.
and I have William as well, our 3D lead artist.
What's up?
And I have with me as well Ian, who is one of our programmers. Oh, sorry, Arkle, my bad.
Just got doxxed.
God damn it. All right, my bad. I completely forgot. All right, and with me as well, I got Sarkeith, who's our programmer as well.
It's me!
And the final three people, Aaron, our designer,
Hey.
and we got Cameron as well, our 2D, 3D animator.
Hello.
All right, so we're gonna take this stream is gonna be divided into three categories. First, we're gonna be talking about the Arctic Cruise. Then we'll be talking about Death Wish, and then we'll be talking about co-op. And then finally, at the end, we have time for a few questions that you guys asked on our Discord. So it's gonna be about 1 hour, not too long, but we'll make sure it's concise. One thing, heads up. I am a bit ill, so if you hear coughing or wheezing, that's me. I'm sorry. All right, so let's talk about Seal the Deal. So for Seal the Deal, our goal was 4 parts, right? We wanted to make a new chapter, the Arctic Cruise. We wanted to make a new interesting take on New Game Plus, which is Death Wish. We wanted 2 players to be able to play together locally, so that's our co-op. And lastly, we also worked on the Nintendo Switch release of Hat in Time, which is coming soon. So really, this DLC has been 4 parts. And so we're going to be talking about 3 of those today, starting off with the Arctic Cruise. So the Arctic Cruise is a very interesting chapter. I think we concepted the idea just before Hat in Time launched. We had just implemented some new features into our Hat in Time engine. For one, a new rendering pipeline called PBR. And we wanted to try to really show off what we can do in sort of a ship and a cruise, right? So not only did we want to show off our rendering pipeline, we also wanted to give the player the feeling they were on a cruise line. So we wanted things to sort of sway as the ship tilts, and we also wanted the ship to sink. So lots of challenges in implementing that. It was a big ambition, but I really feel like we managed to make it so that it feels like you're on a ship. But of course, you can't really make a ship until you design the layout first. So we took a lot of time to make sure that the ship was big, but also that the ship could be navigated. And it was very hard, very challenging, because a lot of the rooms in the ship are technically impossible, but still plausible. So, Aaron, this ship was your big undertaking, right? It was, I think it's probably one of the biggest levels in terms of level design we've done for Hat in Time. Isn't that right?
Definitely, yeah. That changed a lot from like the very first layouts we did, as we kind of got through the progress of putting the level and the individual rooms together. And like realized that we had to move things around to make not just the routes better, but also just like the flow as you move through the ship a lot smoother.
Yeah, and I remember. So this ship has gone through a lot of iterations. I remember we took in playtests and they're like, "Oh, this is so confusing, right?" And we also wanted to make sure that if a pointer appeared on the ship, you could logically go to it. So I think we redesigned the ship like at least a few times.
Yeah, I think our initial focus was making sure that like especially when you went through doors and so on, you always knew which direction around the ship you were moving in. And in the original draft, I think the ship was a lot more closed off. Like it was a lot more focused around specific routes. If you wanted to get to a certain place, there was a certain way you had to go there.
Yeah, and we knew that I mean, it's a big ship, right? So it takes a lot to memorize the layout. And this DLC in general has been massive. It's been a big undertaking. So designing a big ship and also make it easy to navigate has been very hard. And so we gave the player a bit of aid in doing that, which can be seen in ship shape, where sort of a helper arrow appears to help you move around the level. And actually, in ship shape, we introduced the main mechanic of the Arctic Cruise. So when we decided we wanted to make an Arctic Cruise, we knew, just like every other chapter in Hat in Time, it had to have a unique mechanic. And the mechanic we wanted to introduce here was the stacking mechanic. We really wanted the player to feel like they are on a very busy cruise line and lots of people are yelling at them. And I think in that regard, we definitely succeeded. But Arkle, I'm pretty confident you implemented most, if not all, of the stacking mechanic. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, what were some of the challenges in implementing that?
Definitely spawning. Very early on, it spawned things completely at random, and that would usually have you going from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship, and it was really just not very exciting. So we had a distance check at first, which would just try to put things close to you. That also didn't work. Then we had a room check, which is the one that we have now, and that one works pretty well.
Yeah, and I mean, so when the player stacks a lot of things, they wobble, right? And we wanted sort of like this chaotic action where the player is like, oh, I have to go here and I have to go here. Oh, but my stack is wobbling a lot, and oh my god, everything is on fire. And I feel like people can definitely agree we achieved that. And it's a different vibe from a Hat in Time, but we are all about trying something new.
Yeah, that whole minigame is sort of, I would call it an anxiety simulator. Because you kind of have to, new tasks keep popping up, and if you don't deal with them, they increase the pressure. And then if you do deal with them, there's only so many you can hold at once without hurting yourself.
Yeah, it's all about making the player feel like they are a waiter on this chaotic cruise. And coupled with that are the very cute seals who are like, they're trying their best, but also they're destroying everything. And you kind of feel for them as you play ship shape, because you get put in their shoes and everything just goes it's completely off the rails. But the ship has not only been like a challenge in terms of like design. The art for it has been completely different from main game Hat in Time. So as I said earlier, we introduced PBR, which is physically based rendering. And when I see PBR, it's not really real PBR, it's actually just an approximation, like every other game engine as well. But it's a completely different pipeline because we didn't have anything like that for main game Hat in Time. We had to sort of completely change how we do modeling and how we make everything look pretty. So, boy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you talk a bit about what it was like modeling for the Arctic Cruise?
Yeah, sure. So the great thing about the DLC, hang on, there's an echo.
Sorry, let me fix that. There you go.
Yeah, that's better. So the great thing about the DLC was that we could start fresh. Hat in Time was a lot of old levels that we had to keep revisiting and applying new lessons that we had learned and just bringing up to a decent standard. But with the cruise, it was a real good start. You know, we could just start absolutely fresh. This time we had it was just two artists. This time it was myself and Zoni, and we had the challenge of converting this massive ship into the final product that we've played through. And on top of that, we had to learn about PBR. Zoni had quite a lot of experience with PBR already. Myself, I didn't. That was new to me because I'd worked on Hat since the very beginning, 5 years. And yeah, it was an interesting challenge. overall, I think we did a really good job. We pushed through, and yeah, overall.
Yeah, it's I think people overall definitely agree that the Arctic Cruise is like our prettiest chapter, which is a testament to how much we've grown and how much we've been able to deliver in terms of high quality. I think one thing people always point to is they say, "Oh, the captain when he introduces you, he does a little animation," and people are like, "Oh, it's lip synced," and "Oh, it's such a great animation," and that was made by you, Cameron, wasn't it?
Yeah, that whole glamour shot is what we call them. That whole bit was really cool. It was really fun to do something new and work with a character with actual facial controls for once.
Yeah, for main game ahead in time, we'll usually do face plates, which is sort of like a 2D plane on top of the face. But for the Arctic Cruise, I think every character has full facial expressions, which really helps sell their expressions and give the artists more control. And also, the rig was quite nice, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was great. Except that also comes with a caveat that kind of increases the workload by that actually triples the workload from usual. So all the walrus animations took quite a while, but I think it was worth it. They turned out pretty nice, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like people agree that these are the best animations in Ahead in Time by far. Again, just a testament to how much we've grown. So we've talked about 3D art, we talked about the design and animations. It's time to talk about the most important part, which is the 2D art. So before we even begin making 3D models for a level, we have to know what it look like, right? So we make sure that everything looks cohesive and every room is designed unique. And I remember specifically for the Arctic Cruise, all the rooms look so distinct. Like we have a garden, we have an electric room that's just full of electric water. There's a kitchen as well. Completely different areas. And Jenna, so you're the 3D lead, the 2D lead, sorry.
3D, yeah.
how big of a pain was it to make every room distinct?
Well, it had a similar approach to how we did Murder, because Murder had a similar thing where there was tons of rooms, and we had to make it thematically all fit together. And with Murder, we had an easier time because the doors would teleport to the rooms within the map, so we had a lot more flexibility with how we could change the rooms. But when we did Cruise, early on, we tried to do things. We were very ambitious with how we wanted to do the shape and stuff of each rooms to make it distinct. A lot of curvatures, lots of new kind of interesting elements in our designs. Like the engine room especially was a bit where I wanted rotating turbines like in the Titanic, all this stuff out. But we found that because we couldn't adapt the scale and adapt the room sizes as we could with Murder if we wanted to, it brought some interesting challenges with 3D conflicting with what we wanted the scale to be, and we adapted to that early on. But it was so much fun being able to design rooms like in our current expertise that we have, and starting fresh, like Kaboy said. It was completely ground up and a really cool challenge to do a cruise ship. And this was also the time that we brought EXT along, who's Extradent, who joined our 2D team. He started on the DLC here, and it did a fantastic job in the gardens. I was doing the creche area, the decking. Everyone in 2D had a bit of part in each of these rooms, and it shows in the personality that we were able to put in. And it's definitely was one of the most colorful world chapters that we had designed. And especially with the skybox, like our 2D artist 4 did a phenomenal job on the skybox, in that we really pushed it and did like more of a painted kind of feel, like Starry Night from Van Gogh. And that was super neat to be able to experiment a bit more with what we could do and make things as shiny as possible for the PBR people.
Yeah, I remember specifically when we started, I was like, all right, I want Starry Night as the background. And I am so happy that 4 was able to pull that off. It looks outstanding.
yeah, we did it. We pushed ourselves a lot on that DLC, and it shows in the quality that we were able to make and what we can do if we were given like Alpine, if we were given a ground up kind of brief, and we were allowed to have the freedom to design new things and brand new environments and put new characters in, like what we could do with that potential, and it shows.
Definitely. So it took us about a year to release the first DLC for Hat in Time, and it was not only were we releasing the Arctic Cruise, we were tied 4 ways, so the time was also put towards Deathwish co-op and the Nintendo Switch release. So we had a lot on our plate, and it was a lot of hard work. And I cannot stress enough how intensely we worked to make sure that this DLC would get out in this century. It's been an immense amount of work, but we're really happy with the final result. The Arctic Cruise is probably one of the biggest chapters in terms of quality we've made. But it also had to be developed it had to be developed with a lot of other stuff as well. So yes, so that's that. Alright, for anyone who's just joining, I'm a bit ill, so that's why my voice is a bit deep.
Actually, your mic is very deep, mate. I think it's broken.
Is it? How deep is it?
You
Sound
sound
like
like
a-
DJ Bruce.
Yeah, it's really deep.
Right.
Alright, well, tell you what, we'll have a very quick short break, and I'll just re-plug in my mic.
I'm sorry. I can't.
Alright, we'll be right back. And we're back. So I'm told that I was sounding a lot like DJ Grooves, and I am back to having the voice of a voice cracking 13-year-old. That's good. All right. So we'll be moving on to the next subject, which is Deathwish. So Deathwish was our take on New Game Plus. We knew we wanted to make a New Game Plus mode, but we also had some caveats with how traditional New Game Plus works. For instance, it usually resets all your progress, and you usually lose your items. So basically it's a fresh start, but the game is harder. There are some people like that, but we wanted to try something different. So introducing Deathwish. And now we knew when starting out that Deathwish would be very niche, right? Like the people that play New Game Plus is already pretty niche, and so a spin on that would be even nichier. So we knew that it wouldn't be for everyone, but we knew that the people that would like it would enjoy it a lot, and that's definitely been our gut feeling of how the reception has been as well. So yes, so Deathwish was part of our Kickstarter, one of our goals, which is basically New Game Plus, and we wanted to try something new. So in Deathwish, for those not familiar, you start on the map and you sort of branch out and have to complete these very difficult challenges. I think most people were unprepared for how difficult they could be, but they are very difficult. And usually when we design content for Hat in Time, we sort of design them in the way that we make sure that we can clear it without taking damage, we can clear it perfectly, and then we nerf it to like 10% of what the challenge used to be. For Deathwish, we sort of did it unconstrained, so we made sure that we could clear it perfectly, and then we just didn't nerf it. And that's, that's not for everyone. It is definitely challenging. but we thought it was very fun to be unconstrained for once. And so a lot of the work for Deathwish has been primarily in terms of design and programming as well. And so, Arkle, can you talk a bit about... so we added peace and tranquility to Deathwish. And I think one of our biggest challenges was in terms of how do we make sure that the people that need peace and tranquility use peace and tranquility? Because, you know, not everyone is a god gamer, obviously. There's all kinds of people out there. We want to make sure that everyone was having a good time with Deathwish. So, Arkle, can you talk a bit about how do we make sure that people would use peace and tranquility?
Oh, yeah. Well, that mode was mostly your thing, but I can talk about it.
Well, I mean, we worked in it together, right? So
Yeah.
We had the live system, and we had the, hey, do you want to use peace and tranquility, etc. But do you have? Could you talk a bit about? You know, there's a lot behind peace and tranquility. Like, what does it do behind the scenes? How does it work, etc. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. A lot of what peace and tranquility does is just get rid of some of the, I guess, difficulty of the levels. It turns health pawns back on in a lot of cases. It removes some of the extraneous bits, like in Mustache Gauntlet. It turns off some of the extra flamethrowers I added, which is good in a lot of cases. It tones it down a bit, but I don't think it tones it down in a way that really ruins it for most people. I think it's a definitely smaller experience, but still pretty good.
Yeah, it's like what I said earlier, that we reduced the difficulty down to 10% of what it was, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't do that for Deathwish, but Peace and Tranquility basically re-adds that 10% reduction
Well, I would say
down
like
to 10%.
50%. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It so, you know, we know it's pretty niche. So, but that provides, like, I feel like, a good middle ground. But I feel like the biggest challenge with Deathwish has actually been players themselves. So, like, some might notice this, right? But early on, Peace and Tranquility was called Easy Mode, and it turns out no one wants to use something that's called Easy Mode. It's I remember one playtester told me, I don't want to use Easy Mode, it hurts my ego. And I thought, wow, that's not something I would have considered as a thing. And so we changed the name and made sure that players wouldn't feel like they were being punished or that they were being penalized for it, right? We didn't want to judge them. That's why we have the no judgment zone. And not only that, right? So in the early versions of Deathwish as well, you would be able to see all 3 objectives from the start. But it turns out that once again, players are making it needlessly hard for themselves by trying to aim for all 3 at once before they know the Deathwish or before they're familiar with the layout, which unnecessarily makes it difficult. So once again, unexpected player behavior, it's something we didn't really consider. So now, for most objectives, the bonus objectives are grayed out. So it's really, Deathwish has just really been an experience in how players work, which is not something we've had to deal with before. But it's definitely been interesting, and I feel like we've learned a lot. Oh yes, right. So the Deathwish map, Arkle. So you've gone in and I know you've gone in and adjusted a lot to how when things are unlocked and how, in which order they're unlocked. And in general, the Deathwish map and where we put rewards, etc. Can you talk a bit about the process of that?
Sure. Most of the map is organized by level of difficulty. I mean, I know a lot of people say that it's kind of random, it spikes in weird places, but that's mostly because each of the Deathwishes sort of has different skills associated with it, like timing and routing and stuff like that. So everyone's going to have sort of a different difficulty curve. There's not really a way around that, but usually it was the harder ones are shuffled near the back slowly. Like, for instance, Train Rush was something that I found not terribly difficult, the 10-second Train Rush, because that was one of the ones that I made way near the start. It's like back in December. And I found that one pretty easy. So that was closer to the front. And a lot of people were like, that's one of the hardest ones. Parade is so much easier. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Parade is so hard. So I ended up moving Parade to the front and then Train Rush to the back because it was just that much harder. And that sort of is how the map is organized. And then the presents are basically just moved to the end of the line, wherever that is.
Yeah, and I think we had, so the big parade, I feel like for main game that was probably our hardest act, and some people were having a real easy time with it, and some were just having a terrible, awful, difficult time with it. So it's very hard to know what is difficult and what isn't, because people are completely different, it turns out. But yeah, I think that's basically Deathwish. Oh, that's right. Interesting facts. So Deathwish at the beginning used to have a lot of 3 lives missions, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we've toned that down since then. But there's actually, I think there's an interesting story behind this. So when we first started out making Deathwish, we had 3 potential penalties for when you lost all your lives, right? The first penalty was you were timed out, so you couldn't retry it again. The second penalty was you had to pay a certain number of pawns. And the third penalty was you had to pay a certain number of yarn. And so we thought, okay, the timeout is probably the one that people won't like, right? Because it's not fun being timed out. They would rather just pay up front. And so when we tried all 3 out, it turns out that people, when they did the yarn one, they hated that one, right? No, they didn't want to pay yarn because yarn was a limited resource. And then we tried the pawn one out, and they didn't like that either because they feel like they had spent a lot of time to earn that. And so when they got to the timeout one, they was like, we love this, right? Because they came just off having to pay yarn and pawns, and they're like, I would rather timeout. And so that was what we went with. But I think we learned that when people tried the timeout in isolation without that info that the yarn and pawn cost has been there, the feedback has been that people don't like being timed out. So again, another thing we learned about players is that players like to just replay a level over and over again until they perfect it. And the timeout was there to sort of be like, don't do this for 100 lives, right? Just chill out and try something else in the meantime. But no, players just love replaying a level 100 times in a row. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But we've adjusted Deathwish since then, so there's only the time collapse ones that time you out. And the boss rush has lives as well, but doesn't time you out. So again, players have been our biggest challenge in Deathwish. It's definitely been about learning player behavior and behavior pattern, which is not something we had to do for the main game. So it's definitely a lot of valuable knowledge we've learned for Deathwish, and we'll carry that knowledge on to all future content we make. I think Deathwish is probably going to be the hardest ahead in time content you'll ever see, without a doubt. So future content won't be as hard. But we wanted to give this kind of content a go because we know it has a niche but very passionate following. So we're very happy about how Deathwish turned out. So that's Deathwish. So now we'll be moving on. But that reminds me, before I end on Deathwish, Jenna, you had the extremely challenging task of, well, you wanted to remake a large part of the title cards, didn't you?
Yes, part of the thing was that Argyle had set up all these challenges, and we I felt that, especially if you're going into a new mode, what would be appropriate was to adapt the title cards, not like make new ones, because I'm not that crazy, but to adapt what we had to kind of emphasize the challenge that was going to happen. And it didn't take too much work. It was better than redrawing the whole damn thing, but it was certainly like a challenge in that I had to try and find ways to vandalize the title cards, so to say, and tweak them so that they not only match the objective point, but also the Snatcher thematics and the color shift. Like, I made a very deliberate artistic choice to completely tonal shift the title cards so they were very pinks and purples to match with Snatcher. And with certain boss fights, we had to obviously change some of the things. So especially in the Battle of the Birds boss fight, you fight both of them at once. So I had to kind of like smash it together as one title card. Originally, I did want to do specific title cards for Alpine if I had the time, because I never got to do them in the base game, and I always wanted to try and do them for the specific challenges, but again, didn't have time, so got the same title card again. And that was a bummer, so I'll never see the light of day. But yeah, the boss fights were pretty cool to do, especially Boss Rush, and I hope that they reflect the bosses in general, because the only one I didn't change too much was Snatcher, because I felt like his boss card, title card was pretty cool. Didn't really need much change, but when we did the Boss Rush, I collaborated with one of our 2DRs for the first time, and people do point out that it's different, but we did it. I think Koi did a great job on that card. Well, taking what I did.
Yeah, and the approach taken for title cards for Deathwish is kind of similar to the approach we took for co-op for title cards as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me, it cues us right into co-op actually. So co-op was another part of the 4 parts that we made for DLC 1. And in co-op, we wanted 2 players to be able to play the entire game, Mafia Town, Subcon, Battle of the Birds, Alpine, etc., from start to beginning. And so that was obviously a big undertaking, right? Because Hat in Time was designed as a single-player game, but we really wanted to, you know, when you're a kid, you often play games with your siblings, but rarely other games, especially in the collective fun 3D platformer style, where you can just have another player jump in. And siblings usually play together, so it was very cool for us to be able to make it so that 2 siblings playing could just jump in, have fun together, and one doesn't hold back the other. So yeah, so co-op was a big technical challenge, obviously. I lost my thread. Yes, right. So co-op was a big technical challenge, and especially the drop-in, drop-out parts has taken an immense amount of programming work. I would say, you know, we don't joke around when we say that the DLC is 4 parts, because really every part has taken just as much effort, and co-op was one of the biggest. And for co-op, we actually had the very fortunate opportunity to work with the Smashify team, as some of you might be familiar with, and they helped us model a large portion of Bokid, who is an all-new character to the game. And so, Jenna, you designed Bokid, did you not?
Yes, I did. Bokid is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done on Hat in Time, mostly because there was a few different things at hand when designing her. Particularly before we had a previous co-op character, which was very public for a short while, and then as the development went further, we decided that character wasn't a fit. So I was given the task of designing a new character to match and complement Hat Kid, and I made in the beginning, I made 25 different co-op characters, and it's a huge concept blitz out. I'd never designed a character on Hat in Time before to that extent. It kind of pitched around, but never from start to finish tailored a character, especially this one, which is basically player 2. It's a huge deal, and there was a lot of different elements I had to take into account with Bokid. mostly like what kind of headwear she was going to have, because she couldn't have a top hat. We had to find a different way around giving her a unique kind of visual moniker for her hat. So like we talked about doing a bow wraparound thing, and I thought that looked really cute, and I was like, yeah, that's a cool idea, and we went with that in the end. And then color palette wise, she had to be quite different in terms of her primary colors, because Mustache Girl had red, so we couldn't use red, and Hat Kid had yellow, couldn't use yellow. So I was like, we'll use cold colors, green and blues, so that she had her own distinct way of being basically you could tell who she was based on her jacket, her green jacket. And usually you try and stay away from green too much when you've got a platformer, because grass, it blends in sometimes. But we found a way with a big blue bow in the back to make it stand out, similar to how her cape in Hat Kid's cape works. And yeah, there's just a lot of elements in between. We took from the old character, I like the purple eyes, so I put them onto Bokid because I thought they looked really nice. And yeah, it's just a lot of work, like I think a month and a half, 2 months, just to kind of nail that final look for Bokid. And I'm really glad that people like her so much, because it was a really hard effort to get her to look like the best she could.
Yeah, and we can't understate how much the Smashify team would help us. We knew from the get-go, especially her hair is so detailed and so complex. I think actually, so I don't have the stats on hand, but I'm pretty sure that her hair is more polygons than most of Hat Kid's model. It was definitely an undertaking making that, as well as the rest of our outfit as well.
Yeah, the hair was a super fun challenge to do, because it was we had to find a way to make the hair adapt to the models that we have in Hat in Time, because Bokid couldn't be super complicated model-wise or super high detail, because then it would clash a lot with what we already have as player characters. We had to find a way to simplify and make her stylistically fit with everything, but also give her just a really nice visual language to, make her stand out. And trying to balance the two is really hard. I mean, she's got more detail than Hat Kid in her coat, because she likes cats. Hat Kid likes dogs. It's kind of polar opposite thing, but like for the longest time, because we previewed some of the cat stuff on her outfit, people thought that she was going to be a cat, which was pretty funny. It wasn't intentional, but yeah, she's just a huge cat lover, and the detail in that wasn't needed, but I felt like it added a bit of personality to her when we couldn't really convey that. Same with the title cards. We couldn't really convey Bokid's personality too much because she's a player too. Like you won't be able to. She'll get the same cutscenes, but Hat Kid's the one that's basically the main star of the show. How do we get Bokid's personality in through title cards? I was able to do based on the funky mode from Donkey Kong. We thought that was a really funny way, so we adapted that kind of idea, but gave Bokid personality on certain title cards to match what you're going to jump into. So like Vanessa's Manor, it's the same thing. She's really scared in that sticker, but in Depper Studio, she's got like a director's, one of those director's sign things. It's just a little touches to try and make her stand out as her own thing. Yeah, pretty proud of a lot of the things that we did with her.
Yeah, you did good, real good. And the hair was an interesting challenge for the N64 version. Nah, I'm just joking. I used an automated tool.
Yeah, the hard part is making a character that's simple, but also feels like they have depth and detail, right? So Hat Kid is like a super simple character. Bokid is a bit more detailed, but still has to have a simple look so people can draw her without, having to spend too much time. And one thing that's actually interesting, so we implemented co-op for the entire game, but we didn't just implement cooperative play, we implemented co-op versus as well. So not many people might know about this, but if you go into game settings, there's a versus mode for co-op. And Arkle, you implemented that feature, did you not?
Oh yeah, took a couple days, yeah.
Oh, that's underselling it. It's a really cool feature. Can you tell us a bit about how it works?
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's just a HUD element, and if a player does a thing, they get points.
But it's, I mean, there is some balancing to it, isn't it? More, you get more points for doing certain things.
Oh yeah, we had to change that a little bit because it had to work with crews since it doesn't have a lot of checkpoints. It used to be like 1 point per checkpoint and then 5 per timepiece, but then the numbers had to change because it had to score based on deliveries.
Yeah, it's the idea, the concept is sort of inspired by New Super Mario Brothers. What was it called? Is it the World one? 3D World, that's what it's called. Where it's sort of like everyone is cooperating, but also there is a high score at the end. And so we wanted something similar, but make it optional, so by default people would not compete. And I think it's definitely an interesting experience. It definitely makes people hit each other a lot and sort of battle it out. But another thing that's actually interesting is for BoKid specifically, she has a unique animation for when she appears in levels. Isn't that right, Cameron?
Oh yeah, that was made by a new animator that we brought on to help out with the animation load, the workload from the crews and everything. And his name is No Names Left. He comes from a source filmmaker background like me, and he's excellent. I'm so glad to have him and Yellow Jello help me out with the animation. There's a lot of things that probably wouldn't have gotten done without them.
Yeah, it's I actually didn't know who made that. I assumed it was you, but it is really good animation. And you, that's right. You did the Peace and Tranquility animation as well, didn't you?
Yeah, the little dance based on that. I don't even know the context for it, but that Animal Crossing Bob thing.
Yeah.
That dance.
It's I think that little dance is the fan favorite element of the DLC. Everyone just loves it.
Definitely seems like that.
Yeah, everyone loves to do a nihilistic dance. All right, cool. So, yes. Anyone else want to chime in a bit about co-op? Because otherwise, that's it.
No, all good. I'm really happy
All right,
with how
that's fine. All right, so cool. So that was it. That was all the 3 elements of the DLC. Now, I did mention a 4th element earlier, which is the Nintendo Switch release. That release is coming soon, and we'll have more info in the near future. But we're definitely excited about having Ahead in Time on the Nintendo Switch. It's the very first time Ahead in Time is on the go, and that's just exciting. We put a lot of sweat and tears into making that release, so I definitely hope you'll enjoy it. But yeah, this DLC has definitely been an experience. It was our very first time making DLC, and so it wasn't quite clear to us what people expect from DLC, right? Because we know how to make games, but we never made DLC. And so, I mean, we hope everyone has enjoyed Seal the Deal, and we'll enjoy the next DLC as well. There is another DLC coming up. We might do another developer commentary when DLC 2 releases, but we'll have more info on that in the future. So, final segment, we have some questions that you guys have asked. So, we have questions just for Seal the Deal. So, obviously, this is a Seal the Deal developer commentary. We're just going to talk about Seal the Deal and its content. So the first question is, how did you design the boss battles for Deathwish mode? Arkle, I believe a large part of those designs are you, isn't that right?
Oh yeah, boss battles were one of my favorite things to do in this one.
So what has changed between the standalone game and the Deathwish boss battles? How are they different?
Sorry, I had to cough there for a second.
That's all right.
The boss battles were sort of... they still use the same mechanics, but I kind of retooled them as skill tests. So each of them sort of tests a different skill, and this kind of ties into what I said earlier about different Deathwishes testing different kinds of skills. So ordering these was kind of difficult because everyone since they each test different skills, everyone has a different boss that's their least favorite. Let's see.
Well, I mean, so every boss has sort of like a special thing about them, right? So the Mafia boss is the one and only that's 2D, and
Oh yeah.
and Battle of the
And,
Birds is uses all the mechanics from the chapter as well. So they're all quite unique, and it's been interesting seeing them ramped to 10, right?
Yeah. I'd say that the Mafia boss is really mostly about navigating the space above and below projectiles. Not a lot of other bosses do that in the same way. And then the bird boss is just mostly complete chaos. You kind of have to split your attention between two focal points. That's a different skill. And then
Yeah, it's
Mustache Girl, she likes to aim directly at you, and so it's mostly just dodging. And then Snatcher makes a lot of things on the ground that you have to kind of jump between. So each of them kind of does like a different thing.
Yeah, I remember one of the things people would say to me for main game ahead in time is that, oh, I wish I could fight Snatcher more, right? And
There's a whole Death Wish based on that called Quality Time with Snatcher. So it's just 6 minutes of Snatcher, and it just ramps up as you keep going.
yeah.
That one is my personal favorite, and not just because I made the timer for it.
That reminds me, so Sealed Death Wish actually has a lot of quality of life changes to it. Because the challenges are hard, and some of the optional objectives require timers, and some require you to do other things. Can you talk a bit about the quality of life changes you made, Saki?
Yeah. I didn't join until Deathwish was pretty much already done, but there were still a lot of bugs to get squashed. So I guess the main big thing was I added a little timer on the HUD. I also added a jump counter for the Mafia A presses, but the timer, like, we have a speedrun timer that goes in the top right for your act time, and that was being used for the speedruns. But then for Snatcher, I'm like, okay, the goal is survive for this many minutes, so, but you don't know how many minutes, so I added a timer. I think it came out pretty nice, but then I was like, well, hey, I can also add this to the speedrun ones, hide the act timer, and then it's like, well, there's all these other time goals, and hey, I might as well check your best time, because that'd be cool. Hey, I might as well do it for all the other acts, and then there we go.
Yeah,
Timers everywhere.
making Death Wish has definitely been interesting. It's also like Death Wish is pretty niche, and there's a lot of like different ways you can play a game. For instance, some people play with a certain number of A presses, and they talk about alternate universes and half A presses, and we thought that community is interesting, and same with the speedrunning community. So we wanted to sort of encourage people to play those modes like that kind of way, and that's why some of the Death Wishes revolve around it. Because if someone tries it out and they like it a lot, they might join that community and try this different method of play, which is cool. All right, let's look at the next question. Just as an FYI for everyone who's watching this live, these questions were asked by our Discord, and they were asked a few days ago, so you're a bit late. But we'll go through the list and ask and answer the ones that are submitted on Discord. Before I end, in Death Wish as well, one thing that was interesting is that before we released Ahead in Time, we had a chapter called Sand and Sails, and that was later replaced by Alpine Skyline. But there's a mechanic in Sand and Sails where you would get thirsty over time, and that mechanic didn't make it into the main game, but we actually reused that mechanic for Death Wish. So the very first Death Wish you play has Sand and Sails burst mechanic, which is, I think, very cool. Alright, next question. How did you get the ship to sail in the first act of the Arctic Cruise? I think this is a bit more about Smoke and Mirrors. Aaron, so they asked about how you make the ship move, but I think equally interesting is How do you make a ship sink?
Well, it's mostly just like complete trickery, right? It doesn't actually sink, and it also doesn't actually leave the docks at all. So when you trigger the sequence that is supposedly the ship leaving, all that happens really is that the docks map is hidden and just removed. I think we turn on some particle effects for movement and stuff as well. And we do a similar thing for the sinking. You basically just swap maps. We had a setup so that we could take the base map of the ship as it was set up and just kind of rotate it. And then again, right at the end, when you see the ship sinking away in the distance, that is just another copy of like the ship's shell. You can't see it because there's ice in the way, but if you turn to the right and could see through the ice, the ship is still like there, just kind of hiding.
It's been a very challenging technical challenge to make a ship sink. We had to like rotate the entire level to make it sink. It was definitely a non-trivial task, and the programmers banged their heads on the walls for a few months to make that work. I think special shout out to a rookie, our programmer, who made that happen. All right. Next question. What was the major inspiration for the Arctic cruise and its characters? Jenna, both Jenna and Aaron, actually, you guys were there when we concepted the idea of the Arctic cruise.
Yeah, at Gamescom, wasn't it? I think
Yep,
it was.
Yeah.
We were at Gamescom and we were at a stupid detail. We were at Pizza Hut and we were talking about the idea of how we could make what we could do for the next chapter. And I think Daisy Cruise came up at some point. The idea, like, you know, that cruise idea is pretty cool, but it's not utilized much in platformers or anything like that. And I think we definitely played with the idea of what if it sank right there. we talked about it pretty like dead on early. Oh, but what if all the passengers for the most part or the staff were like, you know, aquatic mammals, so that sinking wasn't really a huge deal to them. It was just like, oh yeah, what's the big deal? You know, like it's just kind of, they can adapt, but Hackett can't. So there was like a extra spin on it. We always had the idea from day one with that cruise that it had to go down. Like that was just how it was going to be. But we didn't want to make a really traditional Titanic kind of architecture cruise, because it's super interesting, that like that kind of design. But we wanted something like a modern like entertainment cruise, like a Disney cruise that you get lots of fun colors, a lot of like round modern architecture and design, and it mostly came down inspired by a lot of things. Disney Cruise in particular are really nice layouts, and yeah, that kind of summed it up. We did definitely nail the cruise thing at Gamescom during that talk. That was pretty much, after we nailed that, it was set in stone pretty much. It was cool.
Yeah, and in terms of the characters, I wanted a character that was very, how do you put it? You know, down on his luck. He wasn't very happy with what he was doing, while everyone around him was exceedingly cheery. So the captain is very much a downer character, while everyone else around him is so happy and so cute and so adorable. But he's just having none of it.
Yeah.
It's you know, you don't often see characters that are sort of in that mood. I thought the captain was a good opportunity to do that, and I think his arc where he sort of wants to go down with the ship, I thought that was a fitting conclusion for him as well. Yeah, so that's
Same.
that.
Say the seals in particular came from one of our team members very prominently. We didn't have the staff nailed, like what we wanted the staff to be like at the Gamescom when we were talking about that. When we got back from Gamescom, Yellow Jello, who's our resident seal fanatic, he basically said, "Oh, can we do seals?" And we went, yeah, all right. So we did. So we just pushed the seal thing to 11, and it made Yellow very happy, and it made us very happy because it's super cute, and they
Yeah.
were so adorable, and we got a lot of niche kind of seal references in there,
Egg.
like
Egg.
A lot of their animations involve them slapping themselves, which is a funny thing that seals do.
Yeah.
It's so blubbery. It's so cute, and the voice actress Carol Ann Day, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
She voiced the Alpine Travelers, and she did an amazing job on the seals. Like to depict that dialogue and stuff, she knocked it out of the park. They came together so nicely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
If I could issue one correction, it was not a Pizza Hut we were in.
It was not?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I thought it was a Pizza Hut because okay, so we don't have Pizza Hut in Denmark, and I distinctly remember trying Pizza Hut for the first time. Maybe it was something else.
It was like a little Chinese restaurant.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it was right next door to the Pizza Hut, wasn't it?
Geographic locations of these. It's just a pizza in the.
I
cone.
remember that food plaza for some reason.
Everything needs
Yeah.
to be correct on this record.
We
All
had
right.
a whole.
Next question. We gotta move on. If you want to hear more about Pizza Hut,
Just at me.
go to pizzahut.com.
Oh,
All right. What was the hardest feature to make in Seal the Deal DLC? So the hardest feature. I think everyone has sort of their own little demon that has been torturing them while making this DLC. So let's just go around and talk a bit about that. So, Arkle, what has been the toughest for you in this DLC?
Can I say everything?
Yes, you
Everything's
may.
a pretty good answer. Yeah, there was a point during the DLC where I kind of had to work twice as many hours just to get everything done to be feature complete. And a lot of the boss fights happened during that phase. I would not have been able to live with Deathwish if there was not bosses, so I had to do that while also juggling getting everything else finished for Deathwish. So that was definitely the hardest part for me, is just getting all that done. But then afterwards it was just kind of chilling, bug fixing, balancing. Zargith helped a lot with that.
Yeah, yes, I definitely agree with that. It's always tough to balance a new mode. A boy, in terms of 3D modeling, is there a specific prop or specific scene that you hate with a passion?
Yeah, the stairs. I freaking hate stairs.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Uh,
We gave
The ones
that
in the control room?
everywhere.
Yeah. The reason I hate stairs is because of Hatkid's little legs. She doesn't have very normal legs compared to most game characters. So the distance from the bottom to the top is quite. It's just guessing games with me. I just have to keep placing the steps until she can walk up them, and they also look correct. So yeah, But I mean, overall, in terms of like toughness, there wasn't actually like much struggle at all. The 2D team did a fantastic job drawing all the scene art and props, which essentially allowed myself and Zoni, the only two 3D artists on the actual project, to push out such a huge friggin' boat level. I'm really pleased how it came out, and yeah, it's good overall.
Since the 2D team did such a banger job, Jenna, what was the most annoying or troublesome thing to draw for the 2D team?
I would say, kind of going into what her voice said, stairs were a pain in the ass. They were very curved stairs up on the deck there. I didn't draw them. Well, I did kind of. I kind of drew them. Sorry to the prop artist especially for drawing curved stairs. Don't mean to do that to you. I'd say that the most challenging thing of the whole thing for me was the reception. Holy mother of God, that took so many times to redo. The reception changed. Usually I paint from blockouts, and I would adjust it and tweak it, and it was a big challenge for me to design the reception. And when I would go back in to check that things were there, I'd load the map and like the stuff that I was designing wasn't there anymore. I was like, oh, okay. So I would go back and readjust based on what was there, and then I would go back and other things would change, and I was like, it took longer than I expected, and that was interesting to do, but it was super fun to do that reception room, to try and tie it all together. And then the other one was the captain's room, because trying to make a captain's room that didn't have windows to look at the outside, that was an interesting challenge. It was still a headache to get that to work design-wise, but it was fine in the end. One thing I was sad about is that we didn't get to put there's like a pipe in the alleyway going up to the captain's room, and in the concept art I stuck a seal in the pipe, so that's why it was blocked, but it never got put in final, so I was sad about that.
It seems like everyone here hates staircases. So let's not have any more staircases in video games. Staircases are cancelled.
Bless you.
Staircases suck, man. Like curved ones, don't even get me started. They take ages to do. And if you're doing them from 2D, like trying to do them in any angle beyond isometric, that's for another day. That's for another day.
Real life patch notes: staircases have been erased from existence.
No one can tell me where to not put stairs.
Aaron, Aaron, what would you say was the hardest part of making Seal the Deal?
I did like one thing, so I'd probably say it was that. Like the level design.
Okay, but what part of that thing? What part of Cruise?
Specifically, I would say like in Act 3 when the ship is all tilted, like reorganizing things on the ship when it is kind of offset makes things very difficult to like place properly. That was a big pain, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Especially because, what is a wall and what is floor becomes kind of blurry once you rotate on an entire level.
Definitely. I ended up doing a lot of back and forth on like the specific rotation of the ship, like before I could start doing the route through, just to make sure that there was the bare minimum of you like sliding around on floors when you should be walking on them.
Yeah. Yeah. it was definitely Act 3 was a big challenge.
It was tough.
All right. So Cameron, you did a ton of animations for Seal the Deal. Which one was the hardest one? Give us the deeds.
Everything about the walrus.
Because he's so huge?
Oh, there's a lot of crazy issues with him. Like, he's a walrus, right? So he has to be fat, and he has to, he has the tail, and he has these short, stubby, fin-like arms, but he also has to sit in a chair. He has to be able to reach his hat. He has to be able to reach the intercom, the walkie-talkie on his chest. He's got to do all these things, and it's really difficult to get him to do what you want. But thankfully, Yellow Jello's rig had a lot of control, especially in the belly area, because I don't think anyone really noticed, but he's sitting on his belly in his default idle, and that's like, it's kind of a really awkward thing for a walrus to do, but it kind of works for makes him feel more bipedal, more human, and
I mean,
there's a lot of work trying to get his belly to squish just right so that it looks fine, and all that. I even tried to do a walk, like a movement animation for him that never got finished. Thank God I didn't want to finish that. That was very difficult.
I mean, in terms of him sitting up on his belly, it would have been weird if it's just been laying on the floor, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So it's an odd situation where you have to make him look significant and human-like, but he's still a walrus, which is weird.
I think it worked out really well. I think he reads very well as like a anthropomorphic walrus, but still very walrus.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so Sarkeef. Well, so you came in late into the development of Seal the Deal, but in what you worked on it, what would you say was what was your little devil that was bothering you throughout development?
I mean, I'm sure there must have been some bug that was hard to squash if I really think about it. But it was pretty smooth. Like most of the trouble has been DLC 2 stuff that we can't talk about here.
Oh, that's right.
So there is one thing. This isn't something I worked on, but I'd be willing to bet that for you guys doing on the C++ side, your biggest little devil is probably screen door, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. So for this DLC, we made some new technology called screen door, which is where instead of things popping, it sort of fades smoothly. And that was just a lot of work, and everyone is so happy that it's finally over. It's one of those things where you don't notice it until it's gone, right? So being able to eliminate a lot of the pop-in was definitely a big win. All right, we have the final question because we have to wrap this up someday. This is very fun, but we need to get back to work. The question is, was it fun coming up with the seals text? So Aaron is our writer. He's our designer as well as writer and level designer, so you wear many hats. And you wrote basically all of the dialogue for Seal the Deal?
Yeah, and the seals were fun. Like it can be difficult sometimes to take like a specific style of writing and then carry that through dialogue for a bunch of characters, but I had a lot of fun with it. I'm really glad we got a good voice actor for them.
Yeah, and you wrote all the lines for Snatch as well for Death Race, isn't that right?
Not all of them. I believe
Oh.
Yonagel did some.
Oh, that's right. I wrote some of the initial ones, and you.
I think I actually wrote half of those.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did
like
not know that.
50% that counted.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't touch Death Wish at all until pretty late, so I just kind of came in and added some extra on top of the two of you's work.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I just kind of snuck in and did it.
If Argo's an acclaimed writer as well.
Yeah, maybe you should wear the writer's crown as well.
Many hats in this company.
Good job, stay away.
Cool. All right, so that's basically it for our Seal the Deal commentary. You know, it was our first time making DLC, so it was an experience. We have one more DLC coming for Hat in Time, so we're not quite done with Hat in Time yet. There's more Hat in Time coming for everyone. And you know, we're so excited about making Hat in Time content. It really is our baby, and it's rare that we get to work on a game after it's released, right? So we hope you guys enjoyed Seal the Deal. Definitely, you know, we gave Seal the Deal away at launch for 24 hours. I hope everyone managed to get a free copy there. If not, Seal the Deal is available on the Steam store. You know, we haven't made DLC before, so it's new for us. But we've learned a lot in making Seal the Deal, and we'll take that knowledge into DLC 2, which we're working on right now, and we have no date for that yet. So we're not going to make any announcements here, obviously, right? Yeah, no announcements here. It's just about the developer commentary. But definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/hatintime, on Facebook as well, facebook.com/hatintime. And we'll make any announcement for future content, future releases, the Nintendo Switch release as well. All of that shebang, that'll be on the social medias. So definitely make sure to check that out. We're super excited that so many of you turned out today to hear our developer commentary live. It's you know, it's a new thing that we can do, right? Live stream. That's not something you could do previously for developer commentaries. That's been interesting. But we hope you liked it. That's basically it. This DLC has been blood, sweat, and tears. It's been, you know, 1 year in development. It does take a lot of time to make this kind of content. But we're super happy with how Seal the Deal turned out, and we think it fits perfectly next to all the other Hat in Time content. So that's it. We're done. I'm gonna go get some tea so I can stop being ill. Yeah, so that's it. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great day. Make sure to check out our Discord as well, discord.com/hattentime, I think it is.
It's
Oh, no.
.gg.
Yeah, discord.gg/hattentime.
We talk about.
Yeah, it's all the developers are in there as well, and you can have a grand old time with the rest of the Hattentime community.
We talk about hating stairs a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, if you
Lot of
hate
cool
stairs,
mods
you'll
getting
fit in
worked
If you hate
perfectly.
stairs, we got the Discord for you.
Oh, that reminds me. Yes, we have modding channels as well on our Discord. So if you like mods, if you want to make mods, if you want to play mods, check out our Discord. We have some fantastic creators in there.
Yeah, shout out to the modders, and I'm looking forward to seeing your Timmy Day stuff.
Oh my god. All
Yeah,
right.
so-
All right, I'm
weekend,
closing
isn't
this now. This has to. This is time to
Like-
end it.
Yeah.
All right.
Like,
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Bye.
and stream.
Bye.
Cough, cough.
Goodbye.
See you soon, Jack.